What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals Bikinis, and Bio Longevity Labs. Check out the description for the links, the codes, all in an attempt to save you guys money. That'll be in the description below. So, back at it with the rebound updates this past Saturday, 8 weeks post show. And a much better week, much better version of me, much better um, mentality, much better physical response, all because I was able to get some sleep. So, yeah, that's really just the big comment or the big takeaway from this past week. Not much changed in terms of the diet, cardio, PEDs. Really nothing changed at all. So nothing too exciting. Just the one enormous change was being able to sleep. It's incredible how much that can sway things one way or another when you have a stretch where you get little to truly no sleep at all versus getting long bouts of restful sleep. It just that was really eye-opening for me. It was something I've taken from that experience, is that I will never take for granted the ability to sleep at all ever again. Um so this is kind of where things were at. So, I had pulled the GH entirely when on the issue with my hands and the sleep was going on. I was off it entirely, completely, for probably 10 days. Um, and so that, coupled with introducing a different sleep medication, I was able to start getting some good sleep. And after, I would say, about the sixth day of being completely off of it, the carpal tunnel was still very obvious. The hand numbness was very continued and persistent. However, it had reduced to the point that it wasn't disrupting my sleep and it wasn't painful. So, I would take the sleep medication. I would sleep for 3, 4, even 5 hours at a time, which was incredible. And then I would wake up, and whatever side I was sleeping on or whatever, that hand would be asleep. Um, but it wasn't painful, and it wasn't the reason that I was waking up, and it wasn't preventing me from falling back asleep. So I would just wake up, use the bathroom. A couple of times I would come out and use like an ice pack on whatever hand was numb at that point. But really big improvement in the sleep. And so, because I was at this point where it didn't seem like it was getting any better from that point, and I was able to sleep, the drug abuser side of my brain was like, okay, well, if this is as good as it's going to get, it's not getting any better, and it's tolerable, I'm going to put some GH back in, um, see if I can't salvage the end of this rebound and kind of go into this off season with some GH in. So I put 5 IUs back in, and my idea with that was I started splitting it. So I was doing half pre-workout on training days, half before bed, and then on rest days I would just take it all before bed. And so I did probably 2 or 3 days of that, and it didn't get any worse, didn't get any better, but didn't get any worse. And so I went up to 6.5 IUs, a couple days on that. Again, no issue. So today is Tuesday, and today is my first day I've gone back up to 8. And if I can hold this, I'll be ecstatic. There will be no reason for me to attempt anymore. I will be perfectly content in terms of the off season, staying firmly within the 8 IU crew. Now, when I get back into prep, I'm going to go psycho mode again. I'm sure I'm going to try even more. This past prep, I did 15 IUs a day for probably 10 or 12 weeks, something like that, after I had lost a good chunk of weight. I will probably try 20 when I'm leaner next time. But like I said, the 8 for the off season and while I'm heavy, I think would be more than enough. And like I've talked about, I pretty much did my entire off season last year on none because I just couldn't, my hands couldn't tolerate it. Um, and I am splitting that. I'm doing 4 IUs pre workout, um, and 4 IUs before bed. So with that, after I had gone up to 6.5 IUs, I put insulin back in after pulling that out completely. And I am kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it because I only have a few weeks left of this rebound. You know, with this past week being 8 weeks post show, I figured I would do 11 weeks of a rebound because I planned a trip to go see my parents for the first time in a long time, probably a year or more. Um, the weekend that will be 11 weeks post show. So I have like 3 weeks left. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing only on training days, I'm doing 20 IUs of Lantus first thing in the morning. I'm doing 2 IUs of Humalog pre-workout because I do about 25 grams of carbs in an intra shake. And then I do 17 IUs of Humalog post workout because my post workout meal is about 170 grams of carbs. And then also immediately post workout, I do another 20 IUs of Lantus. This is all on training days. And the reason I started doing this, I know that Lantus is marketed as a 24-hour insulin. I've even heard people describe it as um, closer to 18 hours. I just was not seeing that personally. I would take it first thing in the morning with meal one or a little bit before meal one, let's say around 6 a.m. And I would notice that after my big after my big post workout meal, which is almost always my third meal of the day, and somewhere around 1 o'clock, let's say. So we're talking 6 or 7 hours later. From that point moving forward, if I had used growth hormone at all, my blood sugars were very, very high the past few weeks before I had to pull it out completely. So I got to a point, and I know that there are some people, I've even programmed it this way and done it this way myself. There are people that will do like half of their amount before bed and then the other half upon wake. Um, but I have found more and more that that blood sugar control, like while we're asleep, is really not needed, even if you're taking a ton of GH before bed, because there's no food going in, there's no carbohydrates going in. Um, so it doesn't really matter. I don't need my blood sugar in an optimal spot while I'm sleeping. I want it at an optimal spot when I'm putting a large amount of food in. Um, so the timing and the decision to do that, with my third meal or post workout, it was more so of like, okay, I'm basically halfway through my day of eating or halfway through the timing of my eating window. So if I have my meal one at 6 a.m., a lot of times I have my final meal by 6 or 7 p.m. And so to me, it just made sense to split it up that way. And it's been awesome. It's been exactly what I hoped for. I mean, the even the two I use of Humalog pre-workout, because there was already a baseline of Lantus in the morning, that is keeping my blood sugar. It's not crashing it during my training, but then as soon as I'm done training, even just from the two I use, I'm ready to eat. And so what I do is either before my last set, and I would not recommend this for most people, especially if you're not tracking your blood glucose. But I am wearing a continuous glucose monitor, so I have a pretty good gauge of it, and I know I'm at a point where I know what very low feels like, or concerningly low feels like. Um, so a lot of times I'll go to the bathroom prior to my last set of the day. And then sometimes I'll just wait until after I'm done training. But I'll go to the bathroom. I pin both Humalog and the second dose of Lantus. I'm pinning all of my insulin intramuscular for more of an immediate, strong, kind of rapid effect. And then I have my post workout meal with me, and I eat that right in the car. I will usually sit in the car with the glucose tracking app open, and it'll be 80, 77, something like that. And I've been kind of just toying and not practicing, but experimenting with the idea of letting it get lower and lower before I actually eat. So like for example, today I let it get to about 60. And that's I can start to feel that it's getting low, and then I just slam my post workout meal down. It's cream of rice, whey protein, whey isolate, banana, and honey. So a good amount of just rapid acting, rapid digesting carbohydrates. And then I always keep a Gatorade with me in my bag for the drive home, just in case. But that always pretty much shoots my blood sugar up. That post workout meal will usually shoot my blood sugar up like 110, 120, something like that. So it's totally manageable. And then usually within about, like today, like 45 minutes after that meal, I'd already been home, kind of rehydrated a little bit. And, I looked down at the app, and because I was starting to feel it a little bit, and I'm like at 65. So I'm ready to eat again. And this is exactly what I've wanted. Like even later in the day, all of my meals are being put into a body that's ready to accept food. Um, and then, my last meal is the lowest carbohydrate total for most of this rebound. I've done it with 0 carbs in my last meal. My current last meal has some fats, and it has about 100 grams of rice. So that's only like 30 grams of carbs. So I'll have that. And then usually it's about an hour or two before I go to bed and before I had that growth hormone shot. So I'm putting the growth hormone in a controlled environment, blood sugar wise. So um, that's pretty much everything in terms of like the changes PED wise and any observations that I've made. With that said, as the week went along, even though we hadn't changed the diet, just from sleeping more, my training immediately just came full charge back to life. My training was just awesome as soon as I started sleeping again. Libido came back, my personality, my mood, everything just came back right away. Um, and with that, my body weight started to come right up. And so the before the GH had gone back up, I was like mid 250s. GH went back in, and then I was like high 250s. And then I followed that insulin protocol on a Saturday for a push workout, chest, shoulders, and tries. Had a crazy, crazy workout, crazy pump and look in the gym. Um, and then the following day was my check-in day, which was probably not a good way to time it. Um, if I was concerned with the visuals, but I woke up at 263 which is now beyond where I ended my rebound last year. I ended my rebound about 259 last year, and then the first couple of weeks of my cruise, my weight continued to come up, and I think it capped out at 263 before I started the off season. So rebound wise, I've already surpassed where I'm at. I'm in much better composition, and I'll show you guys some pictures. But I don't know about you guys. For me, when I use insulin, especially it seems like rapid insulin, um, I notice like just a fluffy, not fluffy, but very watery look specifically in my midsection. So, probably not my best set of pictures the day after, such a big insulin protocol. Um, but also the fullness was pretty sick. And, I don't think it's super indicative of how I actually look or, you know, giving it another full week back on this type of protocol. I don't think it's reflective of how I'm eventually going to look. So, um, let me pull some different things up. I'll show you guys, because I've been tracking my metrics as always, and then, um, I'll show you guys the pictures. So this is kind of how my week progressed. This is where last week ended up, where I'm just, again, barely sleeping. And normally, like poor sleep would kind of ruin someone's blood sugar, but also keep in mind using retatrutide and completely removing growth hormone at that point, like my blood sugar had just kind of fallen off a cliff. Um, and then this is where it was at. So it was still, even before I put any insulin back in, it was still in a really good spot with the GH. Um, but the big thing here is that you see the difference in the sleep. And so that check-in morning, that Saturday, woke up 263 the day after putting the insulin back in. PED wise, this is what I've been doing. About a gram a test, 500 EQ, and this DHT right here is 500 mass. So this is the other thing I wanted to talk about. I put in 10 milligrams of Tren per day, and I had always used Tren Ace. The only time that I had ever used a different ester was the first time I used Tren, the first time I got ready for a show as well. And I was just a psycho. I used way too much Tren. I pretty much starved myself because I coached myself. So I didn't know what I was doing. Had a terrible experience. And I largely chalked that up to using Tren and Anthate, regardless of the total or the amount, whatever. And then I put a poll on Instagram a few weeks back because I was kind of toying with the idea of removing the NPP in favor of like a really low dose of Tren. And I had tried this during my prep. I had done 10 milligrams of Tren, but Tren acetate, and it still just really fucked up my sleep. I didn't get other side effects that I normally would get, like, like a sour attitude or like the feeling of just like complete impatience. But it did negatively affect my sleep. So then this time I'm like, you know what? I have Tren Hex on hand, which is actually the longest ester that I know of that's available for Tren. More so, it's longer even than Tren and Anthate. So I put a poll up on Instagram just to try to field a response from what other people have experienced. And about first of all, I got tons of responses. So thank you to everybody that did respond. Um, I think I got over 100 replies or votes. Um, but about half, or I think even more than half of the people that voted said that they have had a better experience in terms of limiting side effects on longer esters, either hex or an anthate. So I tried it and it's been awesome. Like I said, since the carpal tunnel has subsided to some degree, and I've put a different sleep medication in, this has not affected my sleep at all. Not only am I getting longer and deeper sleep, I'm actually sleeping later into the morning than I have in months, probably since March. I've been up without an alarm every single day, basically at 5 a.m. or earlier. And then, for example, this morning I slept probably until 6:30 or something, and I woke up and just felt like $1 million. So that's been interesting. That's probably something I will turn back to the next time I'm in contest prep, is using just a longer ester for that. I guess improved stability and lack of volatility, I guess, that comes with such a short ester and trinacetate. I'm going to show you guys a couple of pictures. Again, don't be too harsh on me, because this is like, I went up 5 pounds in one day from putting insulin in, but pretty full look. Back lat spread. You can see that the glutes are like just pretty watery looking, which is, to be expected. But what are you going to do? Lower back looks okay. See, that's like a big thing. I can always tell, like, whether it's fat or water. Like, my glutes will hold on to water and not look so great. But then if my lower back, I don't see like tons of like muffin top going on here around my trunks, especially, these are trunks that fit when I was in the 220s, and I'm 263 here. So if there was fat on this lower back, it would be kind of pouring over these trunks, and that's not really the case. So actually, I'm okay with that. Back double. This was really the first week that I noticed my mobility was not good. I was really not even able to get into this. Side chest. This again, like, you could see my midsection just looks super, super watery and soft, but I feel like I look like I have a pretty big presence here. And you can see that the shoulders have improved. So I think that's, a trade I'm willing to make. Midsection looks crazy watery and puffy here, but um again, what are you gonna do? The idea is to be bigger. So that's pretty much everything. That's PDs, that's my metrics, my photos. The last update that I really have, that I've settled on this past week, because although the carpal tunnel has reduced to the point that it's bearable and it's not painful, my left hand all day, every day, is still, um, these three fingers, which, from what I've read, are the three fingers that are attached or directly involved with the carpal tunnel itself. Thumb, pointer, and middle finger, still at all points just completely numb. Can't feel them at all. It's annoying as hell doing like normal day-to-day stuff. Um, it's actually not been quite as bad as you might expect training wise. For certain things, I just wear my straps all, the whole time. Um, but this entire left hand basically is numb all the time. And then the right hand kind of comes and goes. Like, it'll still completely numb out when I'm asleep or if I'm laying down, whatever. So I spoke to a handful of offices that offer a carpal tunnel surgery. And I was kind of skeptical. I'm like, you know what? None of these places can really guarantee that they're going to fix this. Um, and I don't really want my insurance involved. So I had spoken to all of them about paying out of pocket for it. And some places were outrageous. Some places were, what I would consider affordable. for what they're offering. But I didn't know anybody that had gotten this surgery. I'm only reading like reviews online. And then my buddy Nick in the gym, I guess, watches the videos. So shout out to Nick. Appreciate that. He knew that I was dealing with this, and he said, I don't know if you talked to him or not, but Roman has had this surgery. And I know Roman from years ago. I've been like kind of all over the world with Roman for different expos when I was with Animal. Um, and I've spoken to him a ton on Instagram since, and he was like, he might answer you. So I send Roman a message, and Roman hit me back right away and was like, yes, I did this. And it was life changing. He was like, the moment I got this surgery done, um, I slept in the car on the way home from the surgery, pain free for the first time in years. He was like, I cannot recommend that you do this enough. He's like, but just make sure that you go to someone that is board certified, because apparently he had a friend that did it with someone that was maybe a little sketchy or a little iffy, and it actually made it worse. They damaged a nerve or whatever the case is, and it made it worse. So kind of funny, kind of a funny coincidence, because actually Roman is one of the people that has I respect so much for, because he's one of the few people I've heard publicly talk about the crazy high GH doses that some people do. Um, I've talked to some guys, I've talked to pros um, privately that have talked about it. And then when they get on a podcast or an interview, they say that they do 6 IUs only. Roman has come right out and said that he's done very, very high doses. I forget what number he put on his, but he's talked about either himself or people that he knows firsthand that have done 50 plus a day. And I didn't even think, like, man, how is he able to do so much, knowing that even 20 was so crazy for me with my hands. So I guess that's how he's gotten the surgery, and he said that he can't recommend it enough. So I have settled on a place that does it here in Florida. Um, there's still a couple of other places that I want to talk to, but I'm pretty certain that I'm going to go to this one place. Like I said, I have about 3 weeks left on this rebound. I have a trip to go see my parents. Then the following weekend, I have a trip up to Canada to peak one of my clients in person, which is going to be an awesome experience. And then I believe I'm going to set it up so that that following week, when I come home from Canada, I'm going to have the carpal tunnel surgery done. I'm going to have it done on both hands. And if it is successful, even though I, previously was talking about just being happy to run 8 IUs of GH all off season, that will change the game for me. If I end up getting this carpal tunnel surgery done and it basically removes that as a side effect, you guys are going to hear that I am going to run some crazy, crazy numbers. I will probably end up doing at least 20 a day. I will probably go up to 40 a day. At that point, there would be really my only limiting factor is really the carpal tunnel. So, at that point, I'm sure I would need a ton of Lantus. I would probably bring my retatrutide dose higher for further blood sugar management. But I would just run a ton of insulin, and I would run a ton of growth hormone. So stay tuned. I'll keep you guys posted about that. But yeah, that's everything. That's 8 weeks post show. That's the rebound update for Project Super Heavy. And until next time, guys, I'm out.